Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Chris Weidenbar, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Wing Commander Darren Lyons. We welcome the veterans who have served, those who are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors and by students on behalf of Gawler and District College, Evanston in South Australia. I now invite you all to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Thank you. Students, you may be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's first World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway lands. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Lieutenant Thomas Whiteway Eales, DCM. Thomas Eales was born on the 25th of January, 1896, in the Melbourne suburb of Canberra, the first of 6 children born to Jane and Thomas Eales, a well-known Melbourne solicitor. When Thomas was a young boy, the family moved to their newly built home of Cromarty in Lilydale. Here, he attended Lilydale Public School before going on to attend Camberwell Grammar School. He was also a member of the junior and senior cadets. From an early age, Eales was known for his high and noble character and his desire to be a Christian missionary. He was also an active member of the Presbyterian Church in Lilydale. Following the outbreak of the First World War, Eales enlisted in Lilydale with his parents' consent on the 4th of February, 1915. He joined the newly raised 21st Battalion. He joined the battalion at Broadmeadows Camp soon after. From early in his training, he was known as Tim to his mates. His leadership qualities were soon recognized, and in late May, he was promoted to Lance Corporal, then to Provisional Corporal the following day. Eales embarked from Melbourne with his battalion on the 10th of May, bound for Egypt. After several months training in the desert, the 21st Battalion boarded the transport ship Southland for the journey to Gallipoli. On the morning of the 2nd of September, as men were preparing for the morning parade, Southland was hit by a torpedo, forcing the evacuation of the ship. Finally arriving on Gallipoli on the 7th of September, the battalion was involved in manning the front line and carrying out defensive tasks. Eales' Gallipoli campaign came to an end in November when he was evacuated to Egypt, suffering jaundice and frostbite. He rejoined his unit in late January 1916, sailing to France at the end of March, and saw his first major battle at Pozières. During the fighting, Eales received shrapnel wounds to his left arm and chest, forcing him to be evacuated. He was sent to England and then spent time with the 6th Training Battalion before returning to France and his battalion in November. After enduring one of the worst winters in living memory, the German army withdrew to their prepared defensive positions known as the Hindenburg Line. The 21st Battalion was involved in harrying the withdrawing Germans, and in the early hours of the 20th of March, 1917, the Australians came up against a determined German force near Ekuste. In Delta Company's sector, a German machine gun held up the advance. Eales volunteered to go forward alone and located an enemy machine gun, which was then silenced by rifle fire. By 8 a.m., the 21st Battalion had been brought to a halt by heavy German small arms and artillery fire. The battalion withdrew and dug in on a new line. Eales was the last man to leave the battalion's forward position when the action was broken off. He was awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal for his actions. In early May, Eales was sent to England as an officer cadet. He successfully completed his course, and at the end of August was commissioned with the rank of 2nd Lieutenant. He returned to his 21st Battalion at the end of September and took over 3 platoon in Alpha Company. During the capture of Broodsendae Ridge in October, Eales was wounded again, suffering a mild fracture to one of his forearms and a shrapnel wound to his neck. He was evacuated to the 20th General Hospital at Canberra. He recovered quickly, and on the 2nd of January, 1918, was promoted to lieutenant. 4 days later, he traveled to Paris on leave, returning to his unit in the middle of the month. The 21st Battalion was one of many units sent to stop the German advance during April. With the line stabilized by May, the Australians began limited counterattacks. On the 19th of May, the 21st Battalion was part of an attack to capture the village of Villiers-sur-Ancre. The attack began at 2:30 a.m., and a little over an hour later, and despite heavy casualties, the Australians had largely taken their objectives. Orders were given to the 21st Battalion to mop up. Just after 4 a.m., reports were sent to battalion headquarters stating that the Australian artillery barrage was falling short by up to 150 yards and causing casualties. As Eales led a small party along a sunken lane towards Villiers-sur-Ancre, Australian artillery shells were still falling short. One of Eales' men, Corporal Leo Nielsen, described what happened next. One of our shells burst short just above us, but only 3 were hit. 2 men wounded, and Lieutenant Eales killed. He put his hands up to his neck and said, "I've got it." They were the last words he spoke, and he died directly after. Eales was very popular, and we were awfully sorry when he was killed. He was always considered such a good soldier. Another comrade recalled that there was never a better living lad, nor a braver or better soldier and officer into action. Eales was laid to rest in Méricourt-le-Havre Communal Cemetery Extension. He was 22 years old. 2 of Eales' younger brothers, William, who served with the artillery on the Western Front, and Duncan, who arrived in France after the armistice, survived the war and returned to Australia. Thomas Eales' name is listed on the honor roll on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. This is one of but many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lieutenant Thomas Whiteway Eales, DCM, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them. lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening.